In this video, we're going to continue on with the Carabiner tops. This will be part 2, and we're going to get ready to create some of the detailing that we would have for the opening of where the pin clip would go into for the Carabiner top. If you have saved this file and are coming back to it, a lot of times when you open this back up, the top level assembly will be active. Please make sure you go down here to the Carabiner top and make sure that it has made the active component before you start doing any changes to the file to move forward. So now that we've gone through and created the majority of the body, we can start focusing on some of these details. So I'm going to go ahead and expand actually in the browser the Carabiner top, and I'm actually going to go ahead and turn on the construction plane, or plane 3, that happens here. It's the offset plane that we created that was 0.155 away from that YZ axis. So I'm going to go ahead and click the plus sign to create a sketch there, clicking the plane that I just had turned on, and I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to utilize the project button or the project option by clicking the P key on the keyboard. I'm going to select the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and select the inside of the ellipse here and say OK. I'm going to go ahead and take the line tool, and I'm going to snap to that corner, and then I'm going to go ahead and draw a line over horizontally, and I'm going to purposely kind of come in a little bit sharp of an angle. If I do this right here, I'll get a perpendicular and it'll set a 90-degree angle, or if I try to snap there, it's going to give me the midpoint, which I don't want. So I'm going to go purposely kind of shallow here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to press dimension, or the D key, and I'm going to choose this line here, the horizontal line. The length of that is 0.145. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select the endpoint of that first line and the endpoint of this line, and I need the dimension to go out at this way. If we go too far, it starts to become a horizontal dimension. We want it to be an aligned dimension. So I'm going to keep it there, keep it close. This is going to be 0.12, and that's going to give us our opening. So I can go ahead and say finish the sketch. I'll put it in the home view. I'm going to extrude that shape into the side of the pin, and that's going to be a negative 0.09 inches cut into that particular case. And I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Now what I'm going to look for is I'm going to go ahead and take a look at creating an offset plane from the front plane here, and it's going to go out to the front. I'm going to do a negative 0.5 and say OK, and I'm going to actually go ahead and click the create sketch button and put a sketch on the work plane. I'm going to then project by pressing the P key. I'm going to go ahead and project the corners of where our shape kind of comes in here. So you can also grab the arcs and probably pick up those endpoints, and I can say OK. But I'm going to draw a line connecting those two straight across. So you should see this kind of horizontal line, and then you can see our arcs that we drew in a previous step don't quite come up to it, which is fine. So I'm going to go ahead and toggle that over to a construction line, and then what we're going to end up doing is I'm going to create a 2-point rectangle, and I'm going to snap to that top line and then kind of just draw a rectangle there. I can select midpoint from the constraints panel, and I'm going to select the line on the rectangle, which will highlight, and then I'm going to click the construction line, and that will line that up directly in the center. We can use the dimensions. We're going to end up having a value of 0.3 for the width, or actually, I'm sorry, we're going to do 0.115. 0.3 is going to be the height, so from that line. That's going to give us our opening. So that allows us to give our fully constrained sketch. I'm going to move to the home position and click extrude, cutting into the shape, into it to be 0.5, cut through on that one, and go ahead and make sure that operation's set to cut and say OK. So that's going to give us the opening to where our pin clip is going to be inserted there between those two shapes. I'm then going to go ahead and I'm going to look for, again, the same plane that I had going on, plane 4. I'm going to create a new sketch on that work plane, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and take a line tool, and I'm going to kind of go through and draw a line. So from the end point here to this point, so it's going to be kind of at an angle, and then as I go along I can kind of make this kind of triangular shape. I'm going to overshoot our outside boundary of our part a little bit, actually until it lines up with that outside edge. And we're going to see our height of this is going to be 0.08, and we might need to go through and actually overshoot this line just a little bit more. So actually I'm going to go ahead and delete this line, and I'm going to actually get rid of, it might be best to go ahead and just, let me get rid of this and let me try that one more time. So on the outside here I'm going to kind of draw, we'll do another triangle like so. And now we'll use coincident, selecting this line at an angle and selecting this point, so that way they're going to be there. Now that's going to not lock us in so much. So let's do a height 0.08. The length of this line, you're going to want to, as you draw it, I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose aligned, so that way it's going to be at an angle, and this is going to be 0.10 for that particular width. Then I can go ahead and say finish the sketch. There's my triangle shape. If I extrude, it'll pick that shape up, and I'm going to cut back into this part a distance of 0.4 for that particular case, just enough to cut off that end, and I can go ahead and say OK. So now one of the things that we can do is we can go ahead and go to create, go to mirror, and under the mirror type I'm going to change from faces to features. I want to choose this extrusion that we just did, and then not this extrusion because that's the opening, you can see how it highlights, but I'm going to choose the one before, which is going to be this one up top here. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to the other side. Then I want to choose the mirror plane. So if I hit select, I can choose what mirror plane that I want to use. So I'm going to go back here and choose this particular work plane. So I want to mirror those over on the other side. If you rotate around, you can see that YZ plane, when it's selected, it's going to give us a preview of what's going to be cut in, and rather than redrawing all this and doing more extrusions, we mirror them over, we say OK. Now we've just went through and cut through all of our parts and details, making that particular case. Our next step is going to be, which may be easiest to run if we go ahead and run the section analysis tool, and I'm going to select the YZ plane here to cut through our part, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK. I'm going to create a new sketch on that YZ plane, and from here we're going to create the little opening to where when we took apart the pin, it's going to be a spring that helps return the pin clip back to its original position. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to offset, and right now I can't pick up anything. So what that means is I need to go ahead and project this curve that shows right here. And so this, you'll see the light blue that kind of shows up, and I can say OK. Now when I use offset, I can pick up that curve, and I'm going to go to the inside a distance of 0.02 and hit enter. Now in order to make a closed loop profile, I'm going to go ahead and take the line tool, and right here I'm going to connect these to the projected line, the outside edge of this arc that I'm creating, to the new line that I just offset. And then I'm also going to go ahead and just, right now, I'm just going to draw a line straight across. I'm not going to worry too much about fully constraining that line, but I'm going to go ahead and grab the dimension tool, and from the line to the origin, this should just be an even 0.7 measurement. And because that line crosses through these two arcs, it's going to create a closed loop profile for me. So I'm going to go ahead and say finish the sketch. I'm going to turn this at an angle. When I hit extrude, this should be the only thing that shows up and highlights in blue. It's the only closed loop that we have going on. I'm going to go ahead and change this over from a one side direction to a symmetric. We're going to choose whole length. We're going to do a distance of 0.04, and it's going to change over to a cut operation, which is what we want, and I can go ahead and say OK. Now once I have that completed, I can go ahead and go up here to analysis, expand it, and I'm just going to go ahead and either you can turn it off, or I can go ahead and hit delete, and that'll get rid of the section analysis, and there we'll be able to see that cut in to our part. Last step, we're going to go ahead and place the hole in on the side, cut through for our axle pin that will go into our carabiner top component. So I'm going to go ahead and utilize, again, I'm going to use plane 3 here. So if I turn it on for the visibility, I can go ahead and select create sketch, choose that work plane, and I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle in the approximate location of where that's going to be. And what we're going to notice is that the dimension of this is going to be from this front point to the center. It's going to be 0.1. The height from the center of the circle to the origin, let me rerun my dimension tool again. So from the origin to the center, it's going to be a 0.64, and then the diameter of this should be 0.06. So you can see that'll locate that hole. We can finish the sketch, and as we extrude, I can cut into the part. We'll say a distance of all, so it cuts all the way through. We'll say OK. That'll create the hole opening for that axle pin, and we see it go through all the way on the other side. So this will complete part 2 of the carabiner top, of creating a lot of the details and everything that go into this particular part. Check out the next video, part 3. Start looking at adding some of the features dealing with the screw threads and the bottom portion here to add some of the detailing that needs to be done, so that way we can show that assembly of our carabiner pin in a future step.